All right, more on our top story. Crowds of Sudanese citizens are out on the streets of the capital Khartoum to protest for a second day against Monday's military coup. At this time, people were reported killed and dozens injured as a result of soldiers opening fire. For an analysis on the situation in Sudan, let's bring in Babatunde Anoba, Africa Fellow at the think tank group Atlas Network, as he joins us. All right, today let's actually bring in, so talk to us. Things are not getting better and the world is actually not happy with how things have played out in Sudan. At the moment, we even hear that aid to Sudan has been stopped. For you, make out what has been happening in Sudan. Could this have been averted in the first place?
Thank you. I think this could have been averted if the Freedom and the Forces for Freedom Coalition, which is the FCC, headed by the now deposed Prime Minister Abdel Andor, had solved the crisis it had within itself. Remember, 2 weeks ago or thereabout, there was a failed military coup, which was pretty much mounted out of frustration against the FCC's infighting, and of course, which has stalled its way of working with the military side of the coalition. So this could have been averted if Abdel Mandork had listened to the disgruntled element within the FCC, and perhaps if the FCC had renegotiated or come to terms to some sort of understanding with the military faction led by Abdel Fattah Burhan.
So now that the tensions have continued to escalate and the aid has been cut, the internet and telephone services are haywire, I'm just wondering how do you think this will play out and how long it will take before they come to some kind of sit down at a table to discuss how to move forward?
So I think the ball is in the court of the military leader, Mr. Burhan, and pretty much everything rests on him at the moment. The US can condemn, or the African Union or whatever other country can condemn or make statements. But if you go by the current trend in Africa, at least in the last 1 or 2 years, you will see that the military rulers, in cases where there have been coup, wield more power than perhaps we ever thought. For example, if you go to the case of Mali, when Assimi Goïta toppled the former president Ibrahim Boubacar Keïta in 2020, and of course they created a transition government headed by Ba Ndor, a civilian, and 9 months after, Assimi Goïta again toppled Ba Ndor. You go to the case in Guinea, where Mamadou Doumbouya toppled the former president Alpha Condé, and I think last week pretty much swore himself in as the legitimate leader of Guinea until an election is being held. So you can see that from the trend, the military seems to be more interested in politics nowadays. And they may be promising to hold elections or even promising to work with a civilian coalition to bring about elections. But I do not think this is the case. And in Burhan's case, I think we could be seeing what will likely be a start of another military dictatorship in Sudan after al-Bashir's 30-year rule.
All right, Babatunde, some political analysts are saying that long-serving dictators are the ones opening the door for more coups to be happening in the continent of Africa. Is this the case here?
See, Aaron, you know as well as I do that greed and the lack of transparency in long-term leadership can only brew disgruntled elements that will break out of issues like marginalization, prosecution, or the intolerability of criticism. And if this is the case, then you can only expect one thing, that eventually when the dictatorship is toppled, that there'll be a lot of contestations as regard who should be the rightful leader or who should be included in that government. You see, one of the many problems, one of the many reasons why this problem is happening in Sudan is because a lot of tribes, remember, Sudan is a very, very, very diverse country. A lot of tribes or suburban regions, religious leaders, some village leadership have cried for that the 30 years of Bashir marginalize their regions or their people. And in the FCC, led by Amdok, they want in, they want to be included, which was why they participated in the 2019 protest. But what Amdok did was that it pretty much created an elite gang within the FCC that marginalized or continued to marginalize the regular people, the clerics, the rebel leaders across Sudan. And it's pretty much a continuum from what we saw from the Arab Spring when Gaddafi was ousted, and there have been a lot of back and forth among rebel leaders. The same thing almost happened in Egypt and now Sudan. So it's a legacy of long-term dictatorship in Africa.
Babatunde, can you speak on the humanitarian crisis? Sudan has a huge population. Obviously, like we said before, aid is being cut. There are people that are being killed, and it seems like tensions won't die down. What could we expect in the next couple of weeks from this?
So you heard when Ned Price, the U.S. Secretary, one of the people working at the Foreign Department, said the $700 million aid meant to be sent to Sudan has now been stored. I think that's, although I'm not a big advocate of foreign aid, but when it comes to humanitarian situations like this, you can only feel for the Sudanese people, particularly if you think around the current economic state of the country. The country is witnessing one of the worst economic moments it has ever seen after independence. For example, the unemployment rate is closing to about 19% for a country of about 40 or thereabout million people. And the inflation rate is at a record high, 166%, plus COVID. You put this along together with the poverty rate in the country. So you can see that people are pretty much frustrated. The fuel price in Sudan is about 2 times the price of 2019. So all this put together can only bring out the frustration in the people, which was why we saw protests and counter-protests last week on the street of Omdurman and Khartoum calling for Burhan to do something definitively. And I guess what is definitive in this case for Burhan is sending out all the civilian side of the coalition.
All right, I want to say many thanks to you, Babatunde, for taking our time to update us with what is happening in Sudan.